And now we get to Thomas Paine and Common Sense, this extraordinary pamphlet that came out in 1776 and helped really spark the revolution. I mean, this is a document, I encourage you to read it in full. We're going to read an extended excerpt here, but it really is almost as foundational a document in American history as the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. John Adams said that without the pen of the author of Common Sense, the sword of Washington would have been raised in vain, right? That we needed common sense to help really spark the revolution. And that's a good way to think about common sense, is as a spark, right? It didn't create the revolution. It didn't create the conditions for the revolution. It simply provided a spark that lit the tinder that had already been set, right? So let's step back a little bit and think about as always, right, our ABCs, and thinking about this document in its context. I mean, it comes out in early 1776, and all the stuff that you've been reading in the chapter has been leading up to this point, right? All the anger about the Stamp Act, the boycotts, the reactions from Britain, the Boston Tea Party, this kind of back and forth, the ratcheting up of tensions. All that has been building up. And you even get Lexington and Concord and the first blood being shed in the American Revolution in 1775. All that happens before Common Sense appears. And you might think, well, of course, the revolution was already happening. This had no effect. I mean, how much effect could it have had? But the truth is that even in early 1776, American colonists were by and large, except for a few leaders like John Adams and Samuel Adams in Boston. A lot of the Boston folks were revolutionaries. They were the vanguard. They were at the front end of things. But for much of the country, there was just a profound sense of ambivalence, of mixed feelings. Right? They had this loyalty to the king. They grew up as British subjects. Again, think about our own loyalty to our own countries, right? And how hard it would be to break those loyalties in favor of something unknown and uncertain. And what Thomas Paine is able to do is really articulate and encapsulate the arguments for revolution and for independence, for a complete break, to say, look, we've not benefited from our alliance with England, from being part of the British Empire. We need our own country. So he's writing in a very volatile context. I mean, the time was right for this kind of document to have the impact that it had. And we also have to think about his own bias, right? I mean, he's an Englishman. Paine is an Englishman. He's an English immigrant. He'd only come to America 2 years before, after having met Benjamin Franklin, of all people, in England. He was kind of a low-level government official. I mean, within the British bureaucracy. He was also a business owner, failed business owner. He had a tobacco shop that failed. He was an excise officer, and that's where he first got involved in politics. He distributed some complaints. He wrote up some complaints that excise officers were having about their own pay and working conditions, and he brought it to the attention of Parliament. So he had some conflicts already brewing in England even before he left, and then he was fired, and of course, so that adds personal fuel to that fire. And so he comes to America already predisposed to be anti-monarchy, right? Because he has real issues with the British king and the British government as it's set up. He in part blames them for his own personal failures or his own troubles in his own life. And he comes, he meets Benjamin Franklin. That already is going to push him even more toward the American cause. Comes to America, comes to Philadelphia. Franklin helps get him situated in in Pennsylvania, and he starts to see things from the American point of view very, very quickly. And although he is a new immigrant, he kind of has that zeal of the new convert, right? He's able to come in with fresh eyes from England and see the legitimacy of the American cause. So he has, of course, he has his own biases. He has his own perspective on the monarchy that he's going to articulate here in Common Sense. And of course, his audience, and this is in some ways what makes him so appealing and so different and so effective, is that his audience is not the upper crust. It's not the educated elite. He's not trying to reach the leaders of the revolution. The leaders of the revolution, by and large, that's the choir, right? He doesn't need to sing to the choir. He needs to get the regular people. He needs to appeal to a broad range of people so that there can be a movement behind the revolution and get people to support it, the regular people of all social classes. And so he's going to write in a different kind of language than a Nathaniel Bacon even, and then a lot of the aristocrats would. From our modern perspective, it's still Old English, but it's much more directed toward an average reader as opposed to an elite aristocratic one. So there is the basic overview, and I want to go ahead and jump right in. And remember, the reason why I'm doing these videos and going almost line by line. We're not going to go line by line with this one, but is to help you understand the full meaning of these documents, which are fantastic ways to learn about history and to understand where the authors are coming from, and also what the readers might be taking from these authors. Okay, so he's going to start out, and again, he's trying to appeal to as many folks as he can. This first paragraph is really interesting, right? He says that time makes more converts than reason, right? That if you have a long habit of not thinking something's wrong, then you tend to think of it as being right? And so that's why it's so hard to overcome custom, right? And he's really he's setting his readers up for his assault on the monarchy, right? Because all of the people who are reading this, are British subjects, and so they've grown up with the monarchy. And if you've grown up with something and it's just part of who you are and what you know, it's hard to question that, right? And you don't question it because it's right. You don't question it because that's just the way it is, right? And he's trying to prepare his readers to question what they've always assumed. Question your assumption of monarchy, right? And so he goes on in the third paragraph. He says, look, the author has studiously avoided everything which is personal among ourselves, right? This isn't a personal issue. This is about larger issues of power and domination and basically of right and wrong, evil and good. It's not a personal vendetta. He's not going to attack individuals in here. He's just trying to make a point. And the point is this. And it comes out in that first paragraph. This would be what you might call his thesis statement, right? This is the point he's trying to make. The cause of America is in great measure the cause of all mankind, right? If we can win here, everybody in the world is going to benefit. Right? These are not local circumstances, but universal, and through which the principles of all lovers of mankind are affected, and in the event of which their affections are interested. Right? The laying a country desolate with fire and sword, declaring war against the natural rights of all mankind. Natural rights. There's that term, right, that John Locke brought up. This idea that there are rights that are inherent in human beings, as just for being human beings, let alone as being subjects of any government. They're natural rights, and so this is a cause, this is a fight for natural rights. And extirpating the defenders thereof from the face of the earth is the concern of every man to whom nature hath given the power of feeling. This is all of our cause, because if the government of Britain, if the King of England is allowed to just stomp on the rights of Americans here, that's going to destroy freedoms all around the world, right? This is the cause of mankind. So he then launches into this assault on monarchy and hereditary succession. So why is that the first thing? Because it goes back to his first paragraph, right? He understands that everybody who's reading this pamphlet is almost predisposed to support a monarchy because that's all they've known. And a lot of them have fought for the King of England, have fought under the British flag. And so he needs to break down their deference to monarchy in general. Right? In that second paragraph of that section, he talks about distinctions in mankind. There is another and greater distinction for which there is no truly natural or religious reason can be assigned, and that is the distinction of men into kings and subjects. Right? He said there's no natural basis for this. This doesn't make any natural sense here. Male and female are the distinctions of nature. Right? You can't change that. Good and bad are the distinctions of heaven. Right? People are good and bad, have good and bad character. But how a race of men came into the world so exalted above the rest, right, these kings, and distinguished like some new species is worth inquiring into, and whether they are the means of happiness or of misery to mankind. Again, he's questioning something fundamental in a way that few people at this time are prepared to do, right? He's questioning the whole basis of monarchy. And this is what makes the American Revolution a revolution. Right, it's attacking a system of governance, of ordering society that has been around as long as people can remember. I mean, the Bible talks about kings and kingdoms and dominions, right? And so he's really got to work on his readership to soften them up, to get them to be prepared for revolution. They've got to be prepared to leave the monarchy behind. All men being originally equals. Now, he that's his preface, that's his premise, that's where he starts, right? But that's a radical statement right there. All men being originally equals. The king doesn't buy that, right? The monarchists don't believe that. England's a class-based society where who you are depends on who your parents were, and that's that, right? Whether you're a king or a poor man, a vagrant, right? And so this is radical. All men being originally equals, no one by birth could have a right to set up his own family in perpetual preference to all others forever. This is as radical as you can get in 1776. You can't by birth set yourself up as better than everybody else. I mean, this is the fundamental premise of small d democracy, right? That we are all equals in this civic life, and we can't have born betters, right? Born nobles and aristocrats. And though himself might deserve some degree of honors from his contemporaries, yet his descendants might be far too unworthy to inherit them, right? He's not saying that everybody's equal forever, right? We have distinctions based on our merit, and that we might deserve a degree of honors from our contemporaries based on what we do and how we act, right? But that doesn't mean we can pass those benefits and privileges on to our descendants. That's not right? And that's where he's at his strongest here. In fact, and this is where he goes on, again, he's trying to appeal to common readers here. One of the strongest natural proofs of the folly of hereditary right of kings is that nature disapproves it. Otherwise, she would not so frequently turn it into ridicule by giving mankind an ass for a lion, right? And the lion, of course, is the symbol of Britain, the way the eagle becomes the symbol of America later on. And so he's pointing out, look, if kings were supposed to be so much better than everyone else, why is it that so many descendants of kings are idiots, right? Why do we have so many bad rulers? Right? That shows you that nature disapproves this. Because once you start allowing people to pass these privileges on, you are violating the natural rights of mankind. And so that's why he wants the readers. He needs readers to reject monarchy and sort of embrace this idea of natural rights, that we all, no matter what social class our parents were part of, we all have certain inherent rights. Jefferson calls them inalienable or unalienable rights, right? That adhere to us as human beings. And so then he's going to go on, now that he's dispensed with the monarchy, he's going to go on to talk about America, this situation in America, right? And he says, very humbly, right? In the following pages, I offer nothing more than simple facts, plain arguments, common sense, right? He's trying to show that this is a no-brainer, as we would say today, right? Let me show you why, right? At the end of that second paragraph, he says, look, the appeal, arms as the last resort decide the contest. The appeal was the choice of the king, and the continent has accepted the challenge, right? Again, this is just a common sense. We didn't want this to happen, but the king forced it on us, right? The king forced us to go to arms because he wouldn't accept our arguments about representation, right? And we've accepted the challenge. The continent has accepted the challenge. And he uses that term advisedly, right? The continent, capital C, because part of what he wants his readers to understand is that you need to conceive of yourselves differently, right? You're not just colonies, small c, that are part of a mother country, sort of fringe elements of this larger empire, right? Just cogs in a British machine. You have to see yourself as a continent, right? This huge expanse, and that you have the power and the potential to be much greater than England, right? The sun never shined on a cause of greater worth. 'Tis not the affair of a country, a city, a country, a province, or a kingdom, but of a continent, right? Of at least 1/8 part of the inhabitable globe. He wants Americans to think big. And again, to see their cause not just as a small one of complaining to your local governor, but this is the cause of mankind, the cause of a continent. We can be so much greater than Britain ever was. Now is the seed time of continental union. We need to come together, faith and honor. All right, the least fracture now will be like a name engraved with the point of a pin on the tender rind of a young oak. The wound would enlarge with the tree, and posterity read it in full-grown character. Right? This is where he gets to the loyalists, basically people who are undermining the revolutionary cause. He's saying, look, if you fight us now, it's like a wound on a tree. You'll never be forgotten, because as this tree grows big, people are going to see that wound. It's going to be etched in that bark forever. Right? You don't want to go against the continent here. You don't want to be against this powerful force. Now he's going to go into some of the counter arguments, right? That loyalists are making to say, well, no, we need to stay in Britain, right? I have heard, going on that second paragraph in the next section, I've heard it asserted by some, right? This is where he's addressing his opponents. And this is a very effective rhetorical strategy, right? If you're trying to persuade somebody of your argument, you can't just make your own argument. You've got to anticipate your opponent's arguments and counter them. Say, oh, I've heard it argued by some that as America has flourished under her former connection with Britain, the same connection is necessary toward her future happiness and will always have the same effect, right? America has prospered. There's no question. Anybody can see how America has grown in the past century, right? And so Paine has to account for that. His opponents say, we prospered because we were part of England, and so we need to stay in England in order to continue prospering. He says, I'll grant you that we've prospered, but that doesn't mean we should stay connected with Britain forever, right? He says, we may as well assert that because a child has thrived upon milk, that it is never to have meat, or that the first 20 years of our lives is to become the precedent for the next 20, right? So now he's likening America to a growing child. It's like, sure, we may have needed, he'll grant that we may have needed Britain's protection when we were young and growing, but we're adults now, right? Just because we were breastfed when we were younger or needed the protection of our parents when we were younger doesn't mean we're going to need them when we're older as well. In fact, the very same people that protected and helped us when we were younger can serve to constrain us when we're old, right? We don't need that constraint anymore. And then he goes on to argue that America would have flourished as much or probably much more had no European power taken any notice of her, because the commerce by which she has enriched herself are the necessaries of life, and will always have a market when eating is the custom of Europe, right? It's not because England was so beneficial to us or so helpful to us. It's because our land produces such wonderful and important and necessary goods, right? We could have done without England. They couldn't have done without us. It's basically what he's saying. But she's protected us, say some. Again, anticipating the opponent's argument so you can refute them. Very good rhetorical strategy as you think about how you persuade people, right? And he says, yeah, sure, they protected us, just as they would have defended Turkey from the same motive. That is, for the sake of trade and dominion, right? Of course she protected us, she being Britain, right? Because her motive was interest, not attachment. It's not because she cares about America, right? Britain doesn't care about America. It's that British interests are here, right? Because Britain knows where its bread is buttered, so to speak, right? It knows where its profits are coming from, right? She did not protect us from our enemies on our account. She didn't do it for our own good, but from her enemies on her own account. She did it for herself, right? From those who had no quarrel with us on any other account, and who will always be our enemies on the same account, right? She protected us from France, but France was only our enemy because France is the enemy of Britain. Take Britain out of the equation, we have no quarrel with France, right? So Britain is only protecting us because it benefits Britain to do that. She protects us from enemies who are our enemies only because Britain is there. See, take Britain away, let Britain waive her pretensions to the continent, or the continent throw off the dependence, and we should be at peace with France and Spain. Were they at war with Britain, right? And so, again, he's addressing these concerns. He's got another one. Britain is the parent country, say some. Right? There's another argument. He says, well, shame on them, right? How do you treat a child like that if you were a real parent? And then he calls the king the king and his parasites. Right? He's using this language. He called him an ass before. They were called monarchs. Asses. Now he's calling king and his parasites. Europe, and not England, is the parent country, he says, right? We come from all over. Remember that map of the diversity of America. Americans are from everywhere, not just from England. This new world hath been the asylum for the persecuted lovers of civil and religious liberty from every part of Europe, right? He's anticipating what becomes the melting pot, a kind of controversial melting pot argument later on, but this idea that we are an amalgam. We are a nation of immigrants, not from any one country, but from all of the world, right? Give us your poor, your teeming masses, poor humble masses yearning to be free, is on the Statue of Liberty, right? We are the world, freedom lovers of the world come here, right? We're not British. We are a product of the world. The same tyranny which drove the first immigrants from home pursues their descendants still, right? We fled the old world for freedom here, and now the old world is trying to tyrannize us here in America. We need to throw it off. And then he goes on to talk about what promise America has, right? Our plan is commerce, right? We will trade. We'll trade with everybody, not just with England, right? We're going to be open. Her trade will always be her protection, and her barrenness of gold and silver secure her from invaders. Now he's talking that she is America that he's talking about, and so again he's making this case as forcefully as he can that our connection to Britain has only been to our detriment in America, and that the only way to become free is to throw off that imperial power. Right? Britain just gets us involved in quarrels and conflicts. And looking on page 98, the last couple sections, right? This is where, again, he's appealing to Americans to think big, right? 'Tis repugnant to reason, to the universal order of things, to all examples from former ages, to suppose that this continent can long remain subject to any external power. Right? Who does Britain think it is to try to control this expanding power? It's a tiny little island. We're going to be so much greater than that. Right? A government of our own is our natural right. He's going back to natural rights again. The right to self-government, the right to govern ourselves. And then that final section, oh, ye that love mankind, ye that dare oppose not only the tyranny, but the tyrant, stand forth, right? He's calling on his people, and you got to have courage, have faith. Every spot of the old world is overrun with oppression. This again sort of is the appeal of America, right? This new opportunity, this new world, this new chance, this chance to create something different. It's going to reject the tyranny of the old. Freedom hath been hunted round the globe. Asia and Africa have long expelled her. Europe regards her like a stranger, and England hath given her warning to depart. Oh, receive the fugitive and prepare in time an asylum for mankind. Right? That's what America can be, an asylum for mankind, for anybody who loves freedom. And so, what Paine is doing here, he really wants to appeal to the common people. He wants to appeal to their emotion. He wants to appeal to their reason. He wants to get them to stand against long-held custom. So the question I have, question number 5 for your homework is why was common sense so appealing to people of all social classes? Why was it appealing to people of all social classes? And which passages, in your mind, illustrate Paine's effort to write in a language ordinary readers can understand? So here's a 2-part question. Why was common sense so appealing to people of all social classes? And which passages illustrate his effort to appeal to ordinary readers? Next, you're going to read James Chalmers' Plain Truth, which is a direct response to Thomas Paine. Now, what's interesting about Thomas Paine, he was a hero of the Revolution. People adored this document. Tens of thousands of copies printed. People honored his name. He tumbles down quite fast. He goes to France, gets involved in the French Revolution, winds up imprisoned. He writes a book called The Age of Reason, in which he questions organized religion and Christianity in particular, and he makes fun of Christianity. So he's kind of ostracized in America and all around the country. He comes back to America and dies in America in the early 1800s, and only 6 people come to his funeral. I mean, he's regarded as an outcast because he rejects Christianity. And so it's only later, really in the 20th century, that he kind of is rehabilitated by historians looking back at the origins of the Revolution. And again, so this kind of shows you how our sense of history changes over time depending on our own preoccupations, on our own questions, and on our own interests. Now Thomas Paine is regarded as a hero of the Revolution, and most people don't even know the last 20 years or so of his life. But this document, the impact can hardly be overstated. And then read James Chalmers' retort, his response, in which he says that independence really is slavery, kind of an Orwellian twist.